Our first video on boundaries was about understanding and defining boundaries. In this video, the second of our three-part series, I will show you how to set boundaries, which is a highly effective way of informing others what your boundaries are. The description box will have a link to the related blog post, which will include examples from the slides. For the sake of simplicity, examples will be focused on a single person who has crossed a boundary. In order to set appropriate boundaries, it is important to think about who has crossed your boundary and why. Understanding the reasons your boundary has been crossed makes it easier to effectively communicate, so that your message will be heard, understood, remembered, and followed. This presentation is done with the assumption that the person who crosses your boundaries is doing so out of habit or thoughtlessness. It's possible that the other person is being purposely rude. Either way, it's best to address the issue in a neutral way, as you will see in upcoming examples. To make sure your boundaries are healthy, consider this. If you're easily offended, you need to work on that first, instead of depending entirely on boundaries. Boundaries should not be used as an excuse for social isolation. Boundaries are intended to improve relationships and interactions, not to shut them down. Other people might be offended if they are new to the concept of boundaries. Don't forget, boundaries are new to you too. Best results come from being assertive, not aggressive. Just as important as what you say, the way you say it matters. Being assertive is about standing up for yourself, while aggressiveness is more argumentative and can cause the other person to react defensively. This can lead to an argument or make them not want to listen to you at all. Being aggressive often comes from keeping anger bottled up and can lead to lashing out at others and damaging relationships. So being assertive about your boundaries sooner than later can help you avoid these problems. This is the basic format for setting boundaries. Just telling the other person to stop crossing your boundary only does the job halfway. It isn't as easy to comply because simply saying no is only the beginning. You need to tell them what you're saying yes to in order to get the best possible outcome. Here's a closer look at how a boundary can be set. This shows acknowledgement of the other person's behavioral norms and your preferred, more appropriate action. Not only does stating your preferred alternative show that you are not rejecting them, it also shows that you are being reasonable. The first example, material boundaries, involves the lending and care of personal belongings and your time and services. If you're very helpful, you've probably encountered a time when someone has not only asked, but expected you to do something for them. If you've got a pickup truck, you've probably been expected to help someone move. You might even have heard this exact sentence used in this example. "Hey, you've still got that pickup truck, right? I'm going to need you to help me move this weekend." There are many ways to handle this situation, and sometimes you have to say no to providing any help. You can also offer what is possible without going out of your way. Remember, if you can't say no to other people, you're really just saying no to yourself. It's very common for people to overextend themselves for others, only to become disappointed when favors are not returned. By offering only what you find acceptable, you can protect yourself from these problems. Physical boundaries include personal space and sexual boundaries. It's common to experience awkward interactions at work, so this is an example some people encounter in the workplace. An acceptable response to unwanted hugs is to kindly back away and tell the other person what you prefer instead of a hug. In both examples, a suggestion for a preferred course of action shows the other person you're not rejecting them, you're exchanging one type of physical contact with something more appropriate. Employers value employees who can handle awkward interactions in the workplace with maturity and grace. This minimizes involvement with HR, disciplinary issues, and legal problems. Mental boundaries often involve one person trying to persuade the other person to change their mind or comply with a course of action. It's quite common for the offending person to be oblivious when they're hurting someone's feelings. You might have had an issue with someone who devalued your opinion, and when you wouldn't change your mind, they devalued you by insulting you. If they apologized, it was probably just for the insult, because they didn't realize they also crossed a mental boundary. In this example, the offending person says, "I can't believe you actually think that's right. You're an idiot." If ignoring the other person is not an option, stating facts and reasons for an opinion is an excellent way to state your case without getting dragged into emotional exchange. This is a mature way to be assertive without being aggressive or defensive. The difficulty of defining emotional boundaries was shown in video 1. In our culture, depending on your role, you might be expected not only to care about other people, but to somehow be responsible for their feelings, or that your feelings should be based on how other people think you should feel. This system makes it easy for a manipulative person to take advantage of another person's kindness, and the fear of letting someone down can keep a vulnerable person trapped in a bad relationship. Although this is manipulative behavior, it's often done out of selfishness rather than cruelty. In this example, "I know I messed up, but if you're a good person, you'll have to forgive and forget." We see some very common elements in the abuse of emotional boundaries. This is manipulation by dictating the way a person should behave or feel by withholding approval. Telling someone they are not a good person unless they are in service to another person's needs is not an equal relationship. In each response, you can see that there is no acceptance of the other person's attempt to control. Asserting oneself is a key element. The demand for time and space to heal, to come to a decision, is very reasonable. Emotional boundaries are particularly challenging, especially if you are trying to remain assertive, not aggressive. Even if you aren't met with an argument, the other person might have questions. Do not apologize for setting the boundary. Neither should you make excuses. This boundary is important to you, and that's really all they need to know. The more the other person gets you to talk about your boundary, it increases the chances they can talk you out of it. Keep responses as short as possible, sticking to the point, and emphasizing the boundary's importance to you. Another thing that makes setting a boundary easier: showing appreciation for someone who has changed their behavior and shown respect for your boundaries. Not only is being appreciative a nice thing to do, it also makes it easier for the other person to remember. This makes it easier to enforce boundaries. Making your boundaries easier to remember makes a big difference, because boundaries are invisible. The only thing that keeps them in place is memory. Enforcing boundaries is necessary if someone needs a reminder after crossing your boundaries again, which is defined as a violation. It can be difficult to enforce boundaries, especially when you're not accustomed to asserting yourself and demanding respect. This is why understanding the importance of self-respect will be included in the upcoming video on enforcing boundaries. Thanks for watching. Be the first to know about new videos by subscribing to our channel. Check out Part 3 to learn more about enforcing boundaries for better relationships. For assistance with defining, setting, and enforcing your boundaries, contact us at crossroadsnd.com.